Hi, this is Julie with a message before we begin to wish all the mothers listening a happy Mother's Day and invite you to seize this holiday as an opportunity to say yes to yourself. We've declared it Mother's Quest May in our community and have so many wonderful things to share with you as the month progresses. The podcast season launched with this episode, my first publication, the Mother's Quest Inspiration Guide, a self guided version of the annual Mother's Quest Manifesto Challenge, and a live virtual Yes Day for Moms that I'm co facilitating with the amazing Graham Seabrook. Check the show notes, join the free Facebook group, and sign up for email updates at mothersquest.com to learn all the details and come along with us during this special month. Now, on to the show. Hi, and welcome to Mother's Quest, a podcast for moms like me ready to live our own truly epic life. I'm Julie Neal, a life and leadership coach, community builder, writer, and mom to two high-energy boys who challenge me to grow into my best self. I'll be right there. Where was I? Welcome to Season 6 of the Mother's Quest podcast and the special Mother's Day episode, which shines a light on the untold stories and far-reaching impact of mothers, and in particular, Black mothers. For this episode, I had the honor of talking with Anna Malaika Tubbs, the brilliant biographer of the groundbreaking book, The Three Mothers: How the Mothers of Martin Luther King Jr., Malcolm X, and James Baldwin Shaped a Nation. In addition to being a mother to a 1-year-old boy with another child on the way, Anna is an author, advocate, educator, scholar, and Ph.D. candidate in sociology at the University of Cambridge. Growing up abroad and influenced by her exposure to all kinds of cultures and beliefs, and by her own mother's work advocating internationally for women's and children's rights, Anna uses an intersectional lens to advocate for women of color and to educate others. During her time as an undergraduate student at Stanford University, Anna took from what she'd seen in her parents' work and began honing her own identity as an activist. As the first partner of Stockton, California, she co-authored the first ever report on the status of women in Stockton to guide future policy decisions with the experiences of diverse women in mind. She's published articles featured in the Huffington Post, For Harriet, Darling Magazine, and Blavity on issues ranging from mass incarceration to the forced sterilization of Black women, as well as the importance of feminism, intersectionality, and inclusivity. Throughout all her work and writing, she draws on her personal experience and extensive research to examine and make relevant gender and race issues in the U.S., especially the pervasive erasure of Black women. In this incredible debut book, The Three Mothers, Anna celebrates Black motherhood by telling the story of the three women who raised and shaped some of America's most pivotal civil rights heroes: Martin Luther King Jr., Malcolm X, and James Baldwin. Alberta King, Louise Little, and Bertus Baldwin were all born at the beginning of the 20th century. All were forced to contend with the prejudices of Jim Crow as Black women. All forged their own unique paths, using their beliefs and talents to shape not only their children, but those around them. And all three had to bury their children, two of them after losing their sons to gun violence. In these mothers and their stories, amidst the pain and grief, there also existed vibrancy, love, and conviction. Another mother I've had the honor of interviewing who has faced the pain of losing a child, but emerged from that experience as a voice and leader making history, is Sabrina Fulton, Trayvon Martin's mother. I thought of Sabrina as I listened to Anna share about the three mothers and decided she was just the one to offer this episode's dedication. Here she is.
Hi, I'm Sabrina Fulton, and I'm honored to dedicate this episode of the Mother's Quest podcast to mothers who have lost a child to senseless gun violence and to the Circle of Mothers, a group of mothers who gather with me each year to tell one another our stories of loss, heal together, and find our way from pain of our grief into purpose. It is important that mothers stand together, support each other, and make our vision for the future known. So I'm here to support you, Anna. in your incredible work and book, and to wish all mothers listening a happy Mother's Day. I know your voice, your children, and your legacy matters. God bless you.
Thank you, Sabrina, for this beautiful dedication, for creating the Circle of Mothers as a healing space where many Black mothers in particular can tell their stories, and for these Mother's Day wishes for every mother listening. One of my biggest takeaways from my conversation with Anna is the importance of acknowledging the continued injustices that Black women endure today, and that Black women grieve, but also experience joy and are not a conquered victim, but are living through life as whole human beings. My Mother's Day wish is that you will find time and space to slow down and truly listen to Anna's insights about the mothers whose stories she so beautifully tells. That you will get and read her book, The Three Mothers. It's so good. And that you'll join me in saying yes to Anna's challenge. She asks that all of us advance our understanding of different forms of motherhood. Picking up books, she says, especially those that focus on Black mothers and Black motherhood, can bring healing for everybody. Happy Mother's Day. I'm Julie Neal, and this is Mother's Quest. Anna, welcome to the Mother's Quest podcast. This is a special Mother's Day episode, and it's the first of my season 6. The minute I learned about you and your work in this book, I just knew in my heart that this was the one to bring me back to the microphone, and it's really an honor to have you here.
Oh, thank you so much for such a kind introduction. I'm so honored to be here.
In this country, from the time that I opened the book, we had George Floyd's verdict come in. We had the killing of Dante Wright. There's video about this man, Andrew Brown. There's so much that's still happening, which are like the direct lines of the white supremacy and the racism that you talk about so much in this book. Yeah. And there's also so much hope and so much power, particularly from mothers who are activists, who are working for change. And it just felt like this is such a poignant time to be talking about this book and the legacy of the three mothers that you write about.
Definitely. For me, as I was writing it, the relevance of it for today continued to come up over and over again. I kept having to go back and do edits because something would happen that was both really painful. George Floyd's murder, of course, as well as several other instances that we've witnessed. And also really, really joyful moments of thinking of Stacey Abrams and the women around her and everything they were able to do in Georgia, and Vice President Kamala Harris being elected. And so it was a constant re-editing process that could keep it as relevant up until the day it was published.
That's incredible. And I could really experience that as I was reading the book. It is, you masterfully weave in so much historical research and context and all these intersections, but then also so much relevance about what's happening in our world today and reflections about your own experience becoming a mother.
Yes.
What's happening for you as you were writing the book, right?
Yes, it was. I was expecting my son when I was in the middle of the research for the book. And then now I'm expecting my second born. We don't know the sex yet, due in August while I'm on the virtual book tour. So my kids are playing a big role in this
book.
Not
ask for your personal journey to be more aligned with your work in the world.
Exactly. And it's so helpful for me as a mother to learn from these incredible women. So I'm grateful for that.
Well, this interview is a little bit different. I said yes to living what I call my epic life 5 years ago, just had my anniversary. And one of the gifts of saying yes to that has been this podcast where I get to be in conversation with the most incredible mothers who are both showing up for their children and in motherhood, but also still becoming the fullest version of who they are meant to be and stepping into their impact in the world. So typically, I would be interviewing you about your epic life. But in this particular instance, we decided to really focus our time. You had more limited time, so this will be a shorter episode than usual. And we really wanted to honor these three mothers in your book. So I hope that one day I'll have you back and we could delve into all the epic guideposts as they show up for you. But for today, yay! Today, we're going to really frame it around the three mothers that you chronicle in this incredible book. We'll start with one question that more directly connects to you. Just tell me a little bit about you and what inspired your quest to write this book.
Yes. And there's so many things, as we all know, that lead to one moment. This book is part of so many experiences, whether that's the way my parents raised me or places that I lived growing up or my work as an academic or my work as an activist and organizer. So there's a lot that leads into it. But I'll take us to the moment when I first was starting my Ph.D. I was incredibly inspired by Margot Lee Shetterly's Hidden Figures that went on to become this beautiful film. And I was both inspired by her work, but also very frustrated that that was the first time I was being exposed to these women's stories. And so I knew I was going to be somebody who contributed to fighting the erasure of Black women's stories. That was what I knew I was going to do from the beginning of starting my PhD. I knew I wanted to be a public intellectual, so it was going to be a book that spoke to people in and outside of the academy, more importantly. And I then thought about the many different layers of erasure that I could try to break down in one project. And so the civil rights movement came to mind immediately because we so often speak about it from the perspective of male leaders. People can have a very hard time naming anybody other than male leaders of the civil rights movement. But it's a crucial moment in understanding our policy today and where we're going in the future. Everyone will continuously come back to it. So I wanted to do something that transformed the way we thought about the civil rights movement. I also knew that I was going to address roles in society that are underappreciated, overlooked. Of course, motherhood came to mind immediately because so many mothers, even before I became a mother, I knew that there was this feeling that they felt unrecognized, that their contributions were being taken for granted. And so that's when I came up with the idea, mothers of the civil rights movement. And I'm going to talk about mothers of sons because there's this weird binary assumption that fathers influence their sons. So I also knew I was going to tackle that. And that's how I arrived at this project.
And then how did you land on the three mothers who you chose to focus on?
Yeah, there are so many incredible mothers and so many more books that should be written about the mothers of different civil rights heroes and heroes today. But I will say the reason I chose these three, it was kind of a natural to go with MLK Jr. and Malcolm X because we so often speak about them in the civil rights movement. But the third, James Baldwin, which some people are surprised that I chose James Baldwin, I think it was all a timing thing because I Am Not Your Negro came out also around the same time that I was brainstorming this project. And I thought, oh, that's brilliant. The way in which James Baldwin talks about being a witness to his friends' works. And I thought, okay, and we'll also get the perspective of a mother of a queer Black child. They'll give us even more beautiful nuances in the story. And when you only present two, I think it unfortunately gives some kind of juxtaposition as if they are opposites of each other. But adding a third brings a beautiful layer of appreciation for the many ways in which they all both intersect in their stories, as well as the ways in which they divert. And we can really celebrate the wholeness and the complexity of Black womanhood and Black motherhood in that way. And I also chose them because all three of them were born within 6 years of each other. And their famous sons were all born within 5 years of each other. So then it was these cool parallels started to pop up. And I could talk about American history through their eyes and develop the book in this chronological order where each chapter addresses 10 years of American history.
It's such a brilliant combination. And you inspired me because I think I was listening to an interview of yours where you mentioned I'm Not Your Negro. So I was watching that last night.
It's powerful.
So powerful. And we'll link to it in the show notes and encourage everyone to both read your book and watch it because paired together, it really provides this incredible picture. There was this line that James Baldwin says about his choice to chronicle the people that he did in the film. Mm-hmm. And he said, I want these lives to bang against and reveal each other. And I think that's what you did too in the story.
Thank you. Thank you. That is it's an honor to have that comparison.
We are going to delve into the epic guideposts and see what lessons are revealed from your work and your writing that Black mothers, but really all mothers can learn from as we are raising our children. I have 2 boys and also, consciously trying to break down the systems of racism that still exist in our country in such terrifying ways. And also become more of our whole human beings that we are meant to be. So We'll do them not in as depth a way as I would love to, but I'll encourage everybody to go read the book so they can find their own treasures and lessons for themselves too.
We'll leave everybody wanting more. That's the strategy.
Yes, absolutely. So this is a taster. So as I mentioned, epic, it's this both a metaphor stepping into living the kind of life that maybe someone would want to write about or that we can tell stories of when we're on the porch with our grandchildren. And also epic is this acronym mnemonic for the guideposts that I think help us live that kind of life when we're raising our children. So the first guidepost, E, stands for engaged mindfully with our children. What can we learn from the mothers? And you can also just choose one in particular if you'd like, about how we can mindfully engage with our children. And what did they do to raise children who shaped our society in such powerful ways?
They did so much. So I will just have to choose particular examples, I think, for each question that will give us teasers.
Yes.
So that when someone goes and reads the book, we'll see it even more intentionally. The first name that came to mind for me when you said this question, when I read it earlier, is Louise Little, and her intentionality in engaging with her children, not only in teaching them how to garden and grow their own food and even hunt their own food because she cared so deeply about self-sufficiency, but also the ways in which she always was engaged in what they were learning in school and then thinking about talking to them about what was happening in the world and the ways in which she was going to teach them in their home. So always being aware of what was said in their kind of formal experience with education. And then as soon as they came home, they sat down at the dining table while she was making a meal. She had newspaper clippings cut out for them of 3 newspapers from around the world talking about the Black freedom movement. They would have to read these out loud to her. And if they didn't know a particular word, she had a dictionary sitting there waiting for them so that they could read that word and learn it, commit it to memory. And then they had a discussion together. So it was like schooling kind of never ended, but it made it something that they all looked forward to and also really confirmed for them the importance of their being in this world, that they were worthy of dignity, worthy of respect, that they were part of something so much larger than themselves. And it was because of how intentional she was in engaging with her children, not only when they were right there with her, but even them thinking about, okay, what am I going to tell mom when I get home about what I learned today in school? And I find that to be just really powerful.
So incredible. And the simplicity of even like your kitchen table and a dictionary. It inspired me to think about how can I be just even more intentional about the little things in our daily life. I was also struck by how she exposed them to all different religions and encouraged them to take what they want, what was meaningful to them, and leave the rest.
Definitely. It's something my parents did as well. And I think something we benefited from, that there was a trust in our own ability to make decisions about the world, that it wasn't, we just needed to listen to our parents and do whatever they told us to do. But instead, here are the options. We want to expose you to what's out there. And then you make decisions for yourself. It allowed us to feel like our opinions mattered. We were respected in the household. It's something that I definitely felt relationship to when I read about Louise Little doing the same.
Okay, next one. P stands for passionate and purposeful impact. This one really inspired me to create Mother's Quest because I do feel like so often mothers, and especially Black mothers and mothers of color, are erased, not only in terms of the impact that we have on shaping our change-making children, but also about our own impact as separate human beings, not even in the mother role. What did you uncover about the 3 mothers and how they were able to make an impact alongside motherhood?
That's such a beautiful question. And the person who I will highlight with this one is Alberta King. So this is MLK Jr.'s mother. And thinking about really our understanding of her role in history and thus far what's been shared about her, and really things that we were missing in terms of this purpose behind everything that she did and the ways in which she was inspiring her children, and how even they knew and her husband knew they couldn't be who they were without her. But then now how we've kind of erased this story and her impact on her children. So to give an example of this, Alberta King, her parents were the leaders of Ebenezer Baptist Church. So she grew up really believing that faith can't be faith without social justice, that you can't be a religious leader unless you're standing up for the oppressed, unless you're using your privileges to advance freedom movements forward. She participated in marches and in boycotts. She was one of the first members of the NAACP, etc. She was very well educated as well. So even her husband, in his autobiography, he speaks to the fact that he could not have become the Reverend Martin Luther King Sr. without Alberta King. But at the time when they got married, there was a law that said that married women could not teach. So she had been on this journey to becoming a teacher. She was, again, very, very well educated. When she met him, she already had a college degree. He was 6 years older than her, but was considered illiterate. He didn't have the same opportunities and privileges that she did, but they fell in love with each other. And in order for her to be married, she was going to have to give up this professional part of her life in this more formal way. And so she decides, okay, this is a sacrifice I'm willing to make. I love this man. I want to build a family with him. But instead, she says, okay, I'm going to use my talents to educate him and to educate my family and her community around her. So she's also an incredible musician. She teaches instruments and singing, and she plays the organ for her church. So she gets her husband into Morehouse because the men in her family go to Morehouse. This is kind of their tradition, and tutors him through his education. So he goes from being considered illiterate to then graduating from Morehouse. And it's not a coincidence that it happens because he meets Alberta King. It's not a coincidence that her children also focus so clearly on education and how they can advance freedom movements through education. Their mother was a trained teacher. So I think she gives us the best. I mean, all three of them will give you these examples and you'll see them throughout the book. But that is a summary of exactly what we're talking about here.
Yes. And I know that you're married to an impactful person in the world, a politician. And when you share the story about Alberta, I think about some of the things I've heard you say about like, oh, you're the woman behind the man. And sometimes you say, no, I'm actually alongside him. But as I hear you talk about Alberta, the truth is like she was in front.
Yes.
She was leading. She was actually making his education and the fullness of who he became in the world possible.
And he was well aware of that. And so for anybody who doesn't already know that, they just need to read his autobiography. And now with the lens of this man is writing this love letter about his wife and the way in which she impacted his journey and how he saw so clearly that she was crucial in her children's lives and the development of their passions. He says it over and over again. You know, she understood the kids better than I did. She was the one they all sought for counsel. They came to her for advice, etc. So it's just that acknowledgement of how important she was and how important we all are in our families.
I stands for invested in ourselves. And this is the guidepost about mothers continuing to invest in our own self-care, our own growth, our own learning, and the things that bring us joy. What did you learn from them about how they continue to do that, even as they face so much hardship? And also, many of them were raising many children. How did they safeguard that?
Yes, and that's a great example to talk about Bertis. So this is a perfect segue. So Bertis Baldwin, who's James Baldwin's mother, her life started actually quite tragically. She lost her mother in her earliest days. I think her mom passed away actually in childbirth. I can't confirm that 100%. All I know is that her death certificate is the same month and year that Bertis was born. So it was either in childbirth or it was within, a couple of days of that. And she passed away from hemorrhaging. And Bertis has this very tragic start to life. But in that, she actually becomes somebody who believes that you have to confront the darkness and feel the pain, but move past it. You have to find healing. You have to find light. You have to focus on love. You have to focus on joy, not by ignoring what has happened to you, but by thinking about how you can move forward and what you can learn from that and how you can help others around you to feel inspired and feel positive as well. And so she definitely carries this with her throughout her life, where she continues to face other tragic moments. Her husband is incredibly abusive. James Baldwin spoke about this quite a lot with his abusive stepfather and how his mother has to endure this and how limited her choices were. But she continues to be this source of light and positivity for her children about what's possible. When his stepfather passes away, her husband passes away, she then goes on to continue raising her 9 children on her own. She never again seeks a traditional marriage. She doesn't try for that at all. She decides she's going to be there and be happy and be free. maybe for one of the first times in her life, and focuses on continuing to create this environment of love in her home where her children, no matter where they go, no matter what they're passionate about, can always come back to her, can bring all the people that they love to her home, that they'll be well fed, they'll be taken care of. And everybody, the children and grandchildren who I was able to speak to, who still speak so beautifully about her and her impact, they continuously come back to the word love and light. And that's what Berta stood for, no matter what she'd gone through.
I can't help thinking about another incredible mother I've been able to interview who also is part of the civil rights movement in her own way, Sabrina Fulton, Trayvon Martin's mom, and how out of that darkness, she created the Circle of Mothers, where she brings together mothers who've lost children to gun violence. And I had the opportunity to volunteer there with my sister one year. And it is in the midst of so much sadness and grief, there is so much light and love and joy in that community that she has consciously built.
Yes, it's powerful. And you see it over and over again with Black women's stories. Not that all of us experience this depth of grief, but to think about our wholeness, that we're not only grieving, we are grieving sometimes, but we also experience joy and we also find ways to celebrate our lives. We're not, as Melissa Harris Perry says, we're not a conquered victim, but we are living through life as human beings, and recognizing that is really crucial. So I am grateful for even the opportunity to shine some light on that. And it's something that I care deeply about in writing this book.
So that is a good transition to the last guidepost, C, which stands for connected to a strong support network. And this guidepost is about remembering that we are not alone, that we can fully love and nurture the relationships in our lives and be nurtured by them. What did you want to share about this guidepost?
For me, in writing this book, there were I think, different groups that I was carrying with me in my heart and thinking about, okay, when this person reads this book, what are they going to take from it and how are they going to feel? And 100%, I mean, this book is universal. It's for everybody to read. There's something for everybody to gain from it. But 100%, this is also a celebration of Black womanhood and Black women. And I wanted Black women, when they picked up the book, to feel seen, wholly, and to feel an experience that could be healing for us. Because there's very little that represents us in this way, where we're seen in our wholeness, when we're seen in our complexity, when those things aren't taken for granted, when we're not reduced into categories, but we're allowed to be diverse and nuanced, and also think about the ways in which we've contributed to each other's survival and each other's joy. And so in writing this book, it was one of my ways of creating community and really celebrating my community, and this notion of, I hope that other Black women feel seen, celebrated, supported by my work. And I hope that it also invites others to see our community in that light that is positive. And I don't say positive in the way that you only say the best things about a person, but positive existence, which means we are human beings who experience the range of emotions that every other human being experiences. It's an important fight against the dehumanization of Black people. And I am really grateful that this book has done that so far. And anytime that someone writes to me and says, I felt seen in your book, I felt healing, I feel like we're creating a better community.
I see you doing that as you bring this book out into the world with every conversation, every opportunity. I look forward to continuing to follow as you build community and bring this positive existence and these incredible stories to Black women and to other women who will be learning from your work.
Thank you. And thank you for being a part of that and helping me get the word out about the book. I am excited for more and more people to read it.
So we're actually at the end. I feel very proud. We've mostly stayed on track.
Yeah, that was great.
New discipline for me. We're at the point where you can give me or anyone listening some kind of a challenge to help us more fully live our epic lives, to honor the legacy of the mothers in your book, and to step into our fullest humanity.
Yeah, I would say Mother's Day is approaching. I think maybe this episode is coming out on Mother's Day. And thinking about what we can all read in terms of advancing our understanding of different forms of motherhood. And I think more focus on Black motherhood can be really healing for everybody. So any book that really celebrates Black women and Black mothers, I hope people pick those up and really experience this journey, because we can't even understand American history or American culture without understanding the history of Black women and Black mothers. And I think the more we are informed on that, the more conscious we all become in the way we walk through this world.
So yes, I say yes to that. I am halfway through your book and I am committed to continuing to read it and listen to it. You're the first audiobook I have ever downloaded.
Oh, wow. What an honor.
It was incredible to both listen and then also pick it up at my bedside table. Is there one other book that comes to mind that you would recommend somebody go to next?
I would say The Power of Purpose by Alicia Garza. It's very current. She is just incredible. And she starts off by speaking about the power of her mother and her journey as an activist.
Okay. All right. So that's next on the list. Thank you for that challenge. We always close with acknowledgments. And then I asked if you would, your final words could be something, one of the quotes from your book. So I want to start and just say thank you for saying yes. I know that you had so much going on right now and we slipped this interview in. And I'm so grateful, both my experience of getting to read your book, but even just this half an hour taster of the incredible lessons of these women. Thank you for following the seeds that you've been planting in your life that brought you to this work. It is so evident that you were the person who could uniquely tell these stories and find these intersections and make it so relevant for today.
I'm grateful for you. Thank you so much. And yes, one of the quotes, the book is filled with quotes at the beginning of each chapter that I use to frame where we're going to go in each chapter. And one is a very powerful and inspiring and kind of humanizing quote. And the other that is always something that reminds us of the dehumanizing treatment that Black people have faced. So you'll see that balance when you read the book as well. But this is one of the first ones, and it's a quote by Edwidge Danticat, and it says, "Our mothers were the ashes, and we were the light. Our mothers were the embers, and we were the sparks. Our mothers were the flames, and we were the blaze."
Happy Mother's Day, Anna.
Happy Mother's Day.
Thank you so much for coming along with me on this episode of the Mother's Quest podcast. I hope this conversation sparked something that will help you live your epic life. If you'd like to get show notes and learn more about how to join the Mother's Quest community, visit mothersquest.com. And while you're there, I would love it if you would follow the prompts to subscribe, leave a review on Apple Podcasts, and help us to spread the word. I want to end with some words to help light the way on your quest. Seize the day, love your people, honor your gifts. Until next time.